Ready? Okay,
We are ready, yeah.
all right. The first tab there is your premium summary overall.
Yes,
No, in your book.
in the book, premium
Yeah.
summary.
Yep. That past first tab there. Looks like
Got
that.
it.
Which that totals 181, 382. I'm not gonna go through it by line, because the companies vary, some will be stronger with property, some will be stronger with auto, and it comes down to the bottom line, so. The next location, or the next tab is just locations. And then, the property is at the back of that. About 2 pages into the second tab.
Bob, I'm an old man, turn it up, so
Okay, I'll do that. We use 32,659,312 on a blanketed, agreed value, meaning there is no co-insurance clause to your, coverage. We've done away with the co-insurance clause, taken it out of question. So if you, like with Travelers, you had a 90% co-insurance clause, meaning that particular building that may have had a loss would have had to have insured within 90% of what it took to replace it, or they can apply a penalty and would deduct from the loss the difference by the amount that you were underinsured on the building. And we're doing an agreed value endorsement, so, is there anything you wanted to add to that, Dave?
Agreed value just means that you guys are agreeing, the insurance company is agreeing, everyone's agreeing that the values are the values. And so there'll be no questions at the time of a loss.
Right. We blanket business income of $1 million, and we have blanket extra expense of $5 million, which is where your biggest exposure is with the extra expense, because your business income is tax revenue, and that's not going away. And then we have flood and earthquake limits of 500 or 5 million. And the next page is your general liability with limits of 1 million and 3 million aggregate. I think you just saw your previous proposal was at 1 million for the 2 million aggregate, and we're doing a 1.3.
This offers $1 million more in general aggregates.
Yeah, the underlying has $1 million extra in general aggregate. So if you have repeated claims, multiple claimants,
And that's within a year.
correct. The umbrella picks up and goes over and above that then, and we'll get to that. Inland Marine, we have scheduled items of 1,895,000 and unscheduled items of 1,100,000 with a $1,000 deductible. And, different than what you had in the past, you, I think, were on actual cash value. We're doing all of the inland marine stuff on a replacement cost basis, which may not sound like much until you have a loss. If you, if Paul had a backhoe burn up at the highway department and that thing was 8 years old, he's gonna get a new one versus what the one was for 8 years, being 8 years old. You get new for old, so.
Just the one thing you need to make sure is that you pay attention to the limit of insurance that you're insuring each piece for. You wanna insure it for the new value and not the old value. So,
Which I would wanna repeat. If you end up awarding us to do that, I would wanna dig into that deeper and review that before we actually went ahead, so.
And that
We
will
did
make,
have a dump truck burn up this year, just sitting in the lot.
Had a tractor burn up sometime last year, didn't it?
We had a tractor burn up last year.
I think there was a tractor that burned
I
up.
don't remember whether it was this year or last year.
But in that situation, a dump truck wouldn't make a difference, but a tractor would have, that would have been
Tractor, okay.
due for oil. We also have a standalone, or not a standalone, but a separate writer for computer coverages, $488,000.
Would that include my 911 center, we just paid almost $1 million for?
No, that'll be a different deal. And we have employee dishonesty, crime coverages. We've got computer and fund transfer fraud there of 300, correct, Paul? Yeah. Which includes computer and fraud transfer, coverage there of 300,000. That's in one area, we also have it in another area, so.
I'm lost. Where are we now?
On the crime,
page
Crime
9.
coverage, okay.
Mhm.
All right, I got it. Now, what did you just say about 100,000?
300,000.
300,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
That's one area, we also have coverage under another area for that. Your public officials and errors and omissions were 1 million per occurrence, 3 million aggregate, with a $10,000 deductible on the next page there.
Let me stop you for just a second. I know Josh talked about it too. What is social engineering fraud? I don't get that.
Basically, it's fraud, it's a situation where, may not apply in this case, but if Beth received an email from whatever, the treasurer of the county that says, hey, we need to transfer $500,000 into the bank, but it's really not the treasurer sending the email, it's done by an outside party. And Beth thinks it's her, and then she does it.
We've had a couple of those where then our HR, I had her send out, do not open this email. I think you received one of those too.
Yeah.
Employment practices liability is again 1 million, 3 million aggregate. With a $10,000 deductible. The next page is a separate cyber liability, which we pick up another 250,000 out of, fraud, social engineering. Under. The limit's $1 million.
What page are we on now, sorry?
Pardon me?
I said, what page are we on now? And
Page 13.
Sorry.
And page 14 also has the cyber liability. Which, all of the lines of coverage are with Great American Insurance Company, except for the cyber liability, and it's with Evolve, because they have they specialize with cyber liability coverages. Now, on page 15 is the auto with $1 million limits, 500 deductible comp, 1,000 deductible collision. And I heard Josh mention there's now 115 or 16 units. In part of my application process, I received some information that vehicles from different departments. I based my quote on 111 vehicles, but I don't think there's that many of them out there. I think there's something south of less than that. So would want to review that schedule before November the tenth goes in and be sure we have it correct. And I would personally go to each department and go through those vehicles with them to be sure that we have them absolutely correct.
Insurance company.
Yeah.
Yeah. There could be as many as 20 vehicles over that don't exist. So, by my count, from the information I was given, so.
You were talking about the replacement cost on the ambulances?
Yeah. Additionally, under the auto, we can do replacement cost on the emergency vehicles, on the ambulances. The additional premium to do that is $119, which I would hardly encourage you to do. So, if one of those ambulances gets involved in an accident, taking a person to the hospital and is totaled or whatever, you're gonna get a new one for an old one. So, because ambulances, as you know, for buying them are not cheap to buy. So,
$119 more.
yeah,
Yep.
yep,
No, just total.
Total,
Total,
yeah.
not per vehicle.
it's kind of a no-brainer to put
It's a
that in
no-brainer.
there, so.
So that's any emergency vehicle that it would be an ambulance or a fire truck that's 15 years or newer, we'll put the replacement cost on it. So,
No, we don't do no fire trucks,
But
our ambulances,
That's not sheriff's vehicles.
No.
it's not on the police vehicle.
we're gonna put rubber bumpers around them, I see those drive.
The umbrella liability or excess liability is on page 16. We're using a 5 million, occurrence limit with a 5 million excess aggregate. So under the GL, if you have a claim, it would be a total of 6 million. Something I think to, I know Josh said he's using Liberty. I do not believe Liberty's umbrella extends over the IPAP workman's comp program, and this umbrella would extend over that, the employer's liability.
over the workers' comp.
Yes.
So that's employer's liability. So employer's liability is if an employee of the county gets hurt and then sues the county stating that it was the county's fault that they got hurt in the first place. And so that's called employer's liability, and what he's talking about is our program through Great American Insurance Company will sit over that liability, the 5 million, so you would have $6 million in that one occurrence. We're questioning whether or not that exists over here or not, so it's something you should find out. Cause you're either, cause basically you're talking about you either have $1 million worth of coverage or you have 6 million, so it's a big difference. And as you guys know, in the state of Indiana, it's the most the public entity can be sued for is $5 million, $700,000 for any one occurrence, okay? So really, that's the key number for you guys to think about is we need to make sure we're covering to at least $5 million because that's state law. Okay. And then the way our excess liability works is a little bit unique in the industry. So when you look at all of these coverages, these underlying coverages here, where you got a million, our excess liability is what we call silo. So let's say you have a claim on your auto liability. Let's say you get in a big accident and it's a $6 million claim. So you would use up your 1 million in your underlying coverage, but you would also use up that entire 5 million of that excess liability over the auto. What that doesn't do is it does not erode the limits on all other liability coverages. You still have your excess limit in play for your general liability, you still have it in play for your public officials liability, you still have it in play for your law enforcement. So all the other lines still maintain their excess limit. So when we do a comparison, we show, you know, that the the current company that you're, you know, with is a one-time use umbrella, whereas ours is usable multiple times over the different lines of insurance. So if you add them all up, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 times 5, $35 million in limits from us, and, you know, $5 million limits from Liberty. Is that, any questions about how that works?
Never need it.
Hopefully you never need
Don't
it.
do that.
Hopefully you
It's
never
nice
need
to know it's available.
Glad.
See better at night.
The other two papers I gave you there, each, the three of you guys, at first,
Say that again, please.
the other two papers that I gave you
Yeah.
guys, that deals with risk management and the services that would be available to you for free of charge. I'm gonna let David talk about that because they will come on site and do things for you. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so, Astra Insurance is our name. All of our paper is written through Great American Insurance Company. We've been in Indiana since 1998, insuring municipalities. Today, we have 160 municipalities in the state of Indiana. So that's made up of counties and cities, so both. So we do
115 or 50?
160. So, and we'd be happy to, have you speak to some of our other counties if you'd like to, you know, speak to some of the commissioners there so that you can kind of get a feel for what we do. But I think the difference for us is that public entity is all that we do. All of our risk managers, all they do is handle public entities. The claims people you deal with, all they do is public entities. So they understand the way Indiana works, they understand the tort laws, they understand what you could be liable for versus maybe what you shouldn't be liable for. And when you get to work with these risk managers, they get it, they understand it. They've been to a waste treatment facility before, they've been to, you know, the street and road department and the park and rec department. They know how these departments work, and they have best practices that they can help with, because of our experience in this market.
Currently, this company also insures the city of Delphi and locally the Delphi School Corporation
And the library.
and a library.
We really like Delphi, actually, it's near and dear to our heart. So, we'd love to round it out with the county. I think there's some advantages to that too, in that if there's ever a claim, it's not gonna be a question of which insurance company is gonna pay the claim. You know, if there's ever a situation where it's in the middle of the city and the county, you know, the same insurance company is gonna be paying it, so there's not gonna be an argument or finger pointing.
I know one of the other risk management things that is important to tow is the EVOC training emergency vehicles, and that can also be done.
When it says on here, employee handbook consulting, what does that entail?
So if you have an employee handbook currently in place, we'll review it based on our experience with looking at handbooks and make some suggestions to you. We have an attorney that we use from Church and Hill. Her name's Liberty Roberts. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her at all, but she specializes in public entities. So a lot of times, if we think it needs to be updated and you guys don't have the facilities to do it, then we'll help you do it. But we make recommendations for free, and we'll update it for free. That's all included. Yeah. So, I think one of the biggest things though is the contracts that you sign or that you're asked to sign. We can help you review those and look at model language that we're seeing across the state, some of the better model language that is being used in those contracts, and help you because a lot of times when you put on festivals and when you have vendors come in, they have agreements that they put in front of you and they say sign this. And a lot of times, if you don't read through that carefully, what they're saying is they're not gonna be responsible if anybody gets hurt. And that's really not the way it should be. If they're the ones setting up these rides and everything, they're the ones that should be responsible for it. So we can help you through that and review those contracts for you and make sure that you don't sign something that you shouldn't sign. So these risk management people are gonna be your risk management people. So you get to go to them, there's 3 of them in the state of Indiana. So you get to go to them and ask them for advice anytime you need to. One of them will, if you decide that you wanna come with us, Astra Insurance, one of them will come out in the next 2 months to visit you. And they'll sit down with the street and road department, and they'll sit down with the parks department, and they'll sit down with, whoever is involved. And they'll learn about the way you do things. They're not gonna come in and say, you need to do this, this, and this, and this. That's not our style. Our style is to work with you, find out if there is areas for improvement, does it fit in the budget? Maybe it fits in the budget 3 years from now. Maybe it's not in the budget this current year. So it's more of a partnership approach. It comes down to good people doing the right thing, so that's what we're gonna try to do.
Workman's compensation, what I'm recommending today is that the workman's compensation, we feel the best fit for is currently with the carrier that it's with, is with IPEP. It's your prerogative to pick who the agent is for that, so if you wanted us to do it, we can reach out to IPEP and have that conversation. Or if you leave it with the current agent on the workman's comp. But
The reality is there's only a couple of markets in the state of Indiana that'll write the work
workman's
comp.
comp. So, currently we feel it's the best fit for the county at the present time.
And our excess will sit over the
Yes,
Part B.
and our excess umbrella will fit over the top of IPAP's workman's compensation.
That cost would reflect on who's presenting it.
Exactly, yeah.
Any other questions?
So, we take this. This, that's their total. You can't read my writing. Yeah, sure.
What did you say to that last there about workman's comp, that you would have something about that?
Yeah, our excess liability actually attaches to the, so your current liability limit for your workers' comp is 1 million, okay? We have a $5 million excess limit that'll sit over that to take it to 6 million. Or, what you really need to think about is the state minimums, the state maximums that you can be sued for, which is that $5 million.
Could I clarify? I didn't really speak to Mr. Reed while I was presenting. I just like to clarify because I've been directly addressed multiple times during this presentation.
Yeah.
So in the proposal and confirmed by the underwriter, Liberty Mutual does write over the IPEP product. So
Okay.
we have that in.
Good.
It's disappointing that this turns into a tit for tat for me. I mean, we're professionals and we should speak to our products. So, I'm gonna tell you what's good about our product and how, we've done a good job. I also wanna say that IPEP, will not honor an agent of record letter. So.
Will not honor what,
An
Josh?
agent of record letter on your account. So, a claim that another agent could just be your agent for IPEP is not correct. They will not honor an agent of record on that. So, I've had that conversation directly with, ownership. So, Mr. Reef was stating that you get to pick who your agent is for ITEP, and that he could do that for you if you wanted to, that's, I don't believe that to be an accurate statement. I don't believe that ITEP will do that. So,
I have seen that done before. I would wanna reach
So-
out and talk to ITEP about that, and have that conversation with them, but I have seen them done.
I've
It's
seen
been
that too.
You think what?
I mean, ICAP is the leader in Indiana, and I've seen if there switches insurance company, you switch the agent of record, that's what you do, but that's a side issue in my opinion, that you can sort out after the meeting. I mean, we can sort out but, I think the main focus should be on what you've got in front of you there.
Well, concerns me about the 20, possibly
Yeah,
20
and,
vehicles.
and again, I gotta verify that, but what was given to me,
Right.
I'm coming up well short of the 116.
So I would call it ghost insurance. So. Maybe something about using. If I understand that right. If I understand that right.
What's that?
If we're paying for something we don't have or don't.
Potentially, yeah.
Otherwise, it's.
I don't know that for sure until I dig into it further, but that's,
I can't say for sure.
from what I've seen right now, yes, I think that it could be the case.
Okay, I missed what you just said, Paul.
Well, I mean, I was given information that I does not total up to 116 vehicles. So, some of those vehicles are on there old, I don't know if they've been junked out, sold, or there's a lot of, it goes through a lot of people's hands, and it's pretty easy for them to forget to tell somebody that, hey, we sold this vehicle, or we got rid of it, so. What I'm saying is I want to dig into it and find out exactly what is there by going by department.
Well, the way I calculated here, between the two bids that we have, there's $457 difference. Yeah.
I have a question, Bill. I know,
Sure.
one thing for EMS that's important for us is, I know that the current policy we have now allows our firefighters to drive our ambulances in case of an emergency, we need our personnel in the back. I'm just asking both these guys today, the new policy, does that stay included that way, or does your policy include it, not to allow that?
so what exactly happens?
Say if we go out on the ambulance run, we have fire department responding with us.
Yes.
Sometimes we get critical patients, we need both of our medical people in the back. So one of the volunteer fire department personnel will jump in, we can drive our ambulance.
Ours would cover you, because the insurance follows the vehicle. So,
And then the other
Josh,
question I had,
yeah, we actually implemented that plan. The previous insurance agent, wouldn't, well, yeah, it was not the case, and we instituted that plan. And the current, my proposal carries that as well.
I remember that.
and Bill, one other question is, I'm just gonna ask both these guys to just clarify for me. Is medical malpractice insurance included for our people in the policy as well?
Yes.
Both are yet?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yes.
What I'm wanting to find in here a little bit more here, and I'm sure that there's a lot of it here, I'm not seeing, but there was a mention on there. I'm hoping I can be literate enough to ask the question. There was an aggregate total of $5 million. You said theirs was one time. no
One-time
matter where,
use, it's a one-time
And yours
use.
was 5 million for each pot.
Each pot, yeah, so we have 35 million in total limits, whereas they have 5.
Is that the way you see it, Josh?
That's a good question.
I don't know what's a fair question back there.
Well, I mean, it's, I would like to, if we're gonna have a discussion in this tit for tat, kind of like, here's something shiny. I mean, how many $5 million losses how many $5 million losses has the county ever had?
None, I
No,
don't think.
right, so I mean, the likelihood of having two $5 million losses in any given year is astronomical. I mean, however, it is possible. With, you know, if you buy a $5 million, you can buy additional coverage, you can repurchase additional layers of umbrella. You know, for the difference, there's some other issues that, you know, if we're gonna have a, you know, public debate on this, the exclusions that are in the primary, or in the umbrella, that are onerous for the county in some of the forms that are out there, so, I would be more concerned about exclusions that are in the policy than I would be about having 7 buckets of 5 million versus 1 bucket of 5.
You see, I don't know how to even address those, and I don't know how, when we do this, we have to do it in a public forum, so I don't know how to not have kind of a, as you're saying, tit for tat back and forth here. I don't know how to do that. I'm sure we have 2 reputable companies here that if we had a disaster, we'd be darn happy to have back insurance. Gentlemen?
So we make the decision at the next meeting, I'm gonna do my homework, maybe we need to do a work study together on this sometime before the next meeting with our attorney.
I think it's simple, really. Chances are we're gonna need the $5 million. It's nice to have that extra backing in case, God forbid, something does happen. We could buy $35 million with umbrella liability for you, or go this route, have additional cost there.
Well, I mean,
It's nice to just have a benefit. I like the things I see here that you do. You offer this.
I can go through, I mean, we can go through line by line, Lauren, and I'd be happy to do that. We also include $2 million of your professional liability, and they include 1. So I mean, we can do this all day long.
Over 1 million per occurrence with a $3 million aggregate,
Right.
and then our excess that's over top of that.
Right, and we're a $2 million primary, so we're giving you additional coverage.
You're always gonna find differences in it.
Right.
Insurance, none of them are
Right.
ever gonna be
The bottom.
apples to apples.
Right.
Which makes it tough on this end.
Yeah.
Right, the bottom line is, we presented a complete quote, and including workman's comp, and our price is our price. They're not gonna be able to honor an AOR on that, and so, I mean, where do we stop? Do we say, I'm better on the property than they are, so let Josh do the property, you know, he's better on the public officials, you know, let him do this, let him do that? I mean, really, you're hiring a risk consultant to do a job, and, you know, I would just say that you have to have somebody that can do the whole program.
Give my time.
Everybody enough time, if you wanna do a review of our inventory, you have to have time to do that. Our policy does expire November 11th of November, is that correct?
Yeah.
November 10th. So our meeting is 4th. So we've got,
I had hoped to decide it today, but I didn't feel it.
I would wanna review the auto inventory much closer. I think also the inland marine schedule needs to be dug into a lot more than what it is currently.
So you got, that'd be.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think potentially there's something there that could be done.
Well, especially since we're gonna give you cost, you know, replacement cost on the inland marine, you wanna make sure that you're insuring everything to value. You know, and that way, if you do have something that, you know, an 8-year-old tractor that you gotta replace, we're not looking at the limit of insurance and saying it's 20, when really it should be 50.
So if they, for instance, if they bought, let's say they bought a backhoe that they just bought it, but it was 5 years old. They probably insured it for whatever, $75,000, but a new one like it's $150,000. That's what we gotta dig into and pin down.
Make sure the values are up.
But that replacement cost thing can be, in that very instance, if you've got a backhoe that's old and wore out, I mean, Lord, you know what equipment costs for farming. You may have a $35,000 backhoe over there now, but it's gonna take $150,000 to replace it. And that's what we would be replacing is the $150,000, which is a sizable difference. But
I
again,
gotta say, we have a hearing that's set at 11:15. And I think what you may wanna do, you don't have to do it, is to recess the commissioners meeting and to reconvene, at the conclusion of the drainage board meeting. And, just saying that, because of that hearing, we've got to move
It's
on.
advertised at 11:15, right?
Is that correct?
11:10. 11:10.
11:10, yeah.
Okay, so, what do you wanna do there? Is that what you wanna
Well,
follow?
we've advertised for
We
the
have-
drainage board, we have to
So do you wanna recess this meeting? and do the
recess this
drainage
meeting
board?
until after the drainage board meeting.
Is that a motion?
Yep.
You seconded? All in favor of a recess, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks for your time. Nice to meet you guys.
what time do you wanna reconvene?
Donnie, how long do you think the surveyor meeting will last?
It depends on the hearing, I mean, other than that, there's not much on there, so I could do